Hello, everyone, and welcome to our career development presentation today, sponsored by the Office of Student Life at HJI. My name is Angelica Baczynski, and I am the Executive Assistant to the President and Director of Special Projects here at HJI. One of the goals of our Office of Student Life is to provide career development guidance and supports, and we are happy that each of you can join us today for this meeting. I hope that it can be a valuable session to each of you to harness the full power of LinkedIn by learning to showcase your brand, connect with others, and build professional relationships. Just a reminder to please keep your microphones on mute for the duration of the program in consideration of everyone on the call. If you have any questions, you may type them in the chat box and we will do our best to respond. We are honored today to have as the host of our program, Dr. Thomas G. Walsh, President of HJI International Graduate School for Peace and Public Leadership. Dr. Thomas Walsh is the 7th President of HJI. A 1979 graduate of HJI, Dr. Walsh went on to earn his PhD at Vanderbilt University School of Religion, where he specialized in the study of religion and ethics. Since his graduation, Dr. Walsh has taught courses at a number of colleges and universities, as well as at HJI. Currently, he is co-teaching a course with Reverend Damian Dunkley entitled Unification Studies Seminar, Ministry and Public Leadership in America. Dr. Walsh has worked closely with HJI co-founders Reverend Sumyoung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon in the establishment and in the leadership of the Universal Peace Federation, where he until recently served as international chair. Dr. Walsh has edited more than 20 books and publications for the Universal Peace Federation, and he serves as executive editor of Dialogue and Alliance, an academic journal indexed by the American Theological Library Association. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Thomas Walsh.
Thank you very much, Angelica, for that kind introduction and for being our moderator for tonight's important program in career development. I add my sincere welcome to all of you who've joined us today. I'm not seeing all of you, but I'm seeing my good friend, President Adama Doumbia, who's in the Ivory Coast right now, waving at you. I miss his smile and happy to see him with us tonight, along with all of you. Thank you for being here. Many exciting things happening at HJI as we move forward, guided by Mother Moon, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, and she's given us many exciting words of encouragement and guidance for how we can build and grow our institution to be a light to the world. A home of thought promotes peace around the world and spiritual formation for our wonderful students. So thank you for joining. This topic of career development is very important. It's increasingly important at this time in America and I think worldwide as people reflect on various educational institutions and the outcomes that result from students studying in various programs and how to make sure that the pursuit of academic excellence has ultimately not only an internal outcome of what we might call at HJI spiritual formation, but also developing skills that can be applied in the world and bear fruit in the world, and including building our own careers, our ministries, and our capacity in the area of public leadership. So the name HJI International Graduate School for Peace and Public Leadership. We all have different areas and different gifts, vocations where we work, and I think tonight's program is a very important component of our kind of portfolio or our kind of toolbox that we need in order to effectively impact the world in very positive and good ways. And we have a great opportunity tonight to hear from Dean Stephen Boyd. He's our Dean of Enrollment Management and Student Life. This particular program is being organized by the Office of Student Life. Associate Dean Deshotel cannot be here. She's in class, as she should be tonight. But she's doing a wonderful job along with our student government, Graduate Students Union Association at HJI. Dean Boyd is currently our Dean of Enrollment Management and Student Life. He's an instructor in management at HJI. And prior to coming to HJI, he was Director of International Admissions at the University of Bridgeport and Director of Graduate and International Admissions at the University of New Haven. He has been a past president of the American International Recruitment Council, an international nonprofit comprised of over 500 colleges and universities and higher ed service organizations. Mr. Boyd is an expert in the field of international student recruitment and has been a frequent presenter at major international conferences in the United States and around the world. He has an MBA in marketing. Last year received the HJI Graduate Certificate in Unification and Leadership and is currently a student in our Doctor of Ministry program. Prior to his work in higher ed, he and his wife, Colleen, were foreign missionaries for 20 years in Uruguay. They were blessed in marriage in the 2075 couples ceremony in 1982, officiated by Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon. They have 3 children and 7 are expecting their 7th grandchild. Dean Boyd wanted to talk about his children and grandchildren entirely tonight, but I encouraged him to stick to the topic. Without further ado, my dear friend and respected colleague, Dean Stephen Boyd. Dean Boyd.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Walsh. I really appreciate your kind introduction. And I want to thank all of you again, as Angelica did and Dr. Walsh did. Thank you all for coming tonight. And as I notice, I look at those who are in attendance. We have members of our community, both unificationists and non-unificationists from different parts of the U.S. and from around the world. So bless each of you whose time zone is not the most appropriate, maybe for this kind of meeting, but thank you so much for taking the time and making the effort to be here. As Dr. Walsh explained, HJI in the area of student life and student development is working hard to prepare our students not only academically in the classroom in terms of activities that are co-curricular to their studies while at HJI, but also looking to the future, what you will do in your career or your mission path after graduation. And so that is why we call this a career development series. In the past, we've had programs about resume building, preparation for a job interview, how to apply for a job, a number of important conversations about these topics that help you once you go to the marketplace. And tonight we want to talk about something that kind of underlies all of this. And we identify not just our institution, but institutions around the country and around the world are more and more aware that we want to help our students to build an understanding of who they are, what they have to offer on every level. And so tonight, I'll share my screen. Tonight, the title of our presentation is Personal Branding and Your LinkedIn Profile. Now, for some of us, the word branding may sound a bit odd. And I'm going to talk a lot about that this evening. And I hope by the end of the presentation tonight, you'll feel much more comfortable with this and actually understand how you do have a brand, whether you realize it or not. So we're going to speak about these topics. But to begin our presentation this evening, I'd like to do a poll among those that are in attendance to get an idea of your familiarity with the idea of social media, the use of social media, and personal branding, particularly with the area of LinkedIn. So, Angelica, can you put the first poll question up? We have 2 sessions this evening. Each session will have 4 questions. So I'll give you a few minutes a few seconds to look at this question and quickly answer just whatever the first thing that comes into your head. On which of the following social media platforms do you have an account? Select all that apply. You may select more than one. Which of these social media platforms do you have an account on? Okay, good. We're getting the answers are coming in. We'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll kind of look at what our results are here. Okay, so it looks like 80%, over 80% of those present tonight have a Facebook account. In second position is a LinkedIn account. That's great news, 53%. Many people have X account, or what used to be called Twitter, and a fewer percentage have an Instagram account. Of course, the ones that we're naming here are all based in North America, although they're worldwide. And of course, it's always a good number of people in the other category who have platforms are using in different parts of the world. Okay, so this gives you an idea also of who's on the call tonight. Okay, let's go to the next question. Oh, you need to share the results. Angelica first. Okay, this is the second question. So, again, just to quickly answer, how often do you view or post on social media? Daily, weekly, monthly, rarely, or I don't have any social media accounts? Okay, good. It looks like 40%, around 40% are on social media every day. That's not unusual, but an almost equal number, 35%, rarely post. So that gives us a good idea about who's on the call and what each individual situation may be like. 18% weekly and monthly 0. Okay, so people are doing it within the month or rarely. Okay, next question. Okay, question number 3. What is the focus of your personal brand? In other words, we're going to talk about this more, but whatever you understand personal branding or your personal brand to be, what is it you're seeking to portray or achieve through what you understand to be your personal brand? Expertise in your field or your ministry or your industry. You're trying to express leadership, demonstrate you show leadership or providing mentorship to others. You're trying to express or gain creativity and innovation. Or any other idea that you have for your own personal brand, or if you believe you don't have a personal brand, please mark that. This is anonymous, so that's not uncommon. People may not feel like they have a brand. So that's kind of why we're having this talk tonight. Okay, so 36% of those on the call, 38% now, are looking to gain or express expertise in their field. And then again, about an equal amount feel like they don't have a personal brand. I'm kind of glad to hear that because we have something to talk with you about tonight. Okay, last question in this poll. Okay, question number 4. How comfortable are you with personal promotion on social media? Are you very comfortable? Are you somewhat comfortable? You're not very comfortable, not comfortable at all? Or if you don't promote your brand on social media, please just quickly check one of those boxes. This is always a very revealing question, right? And honestly, most people, particularly in the beginning, are not very comfortable about talking about themselves, quote unquote, right? And I hope I can dispel that myth during the course of the program tonight. Okay, so it looks like pretty much everybody's in. We have a few who are I have one person who's very comfortable, some somewhat comfortable, and most people are not very comfortable or don't feel like they have a social brand, a personal brand of social media. Okay, Angelica, let's take down the poll and then we'll move on in the presentation. So that was just to kind of give us an idea for each of us to show, to know who we are that's on the call, and then also help you to identify yourself, what it is that where you find yourself, where you locate yourself in this whole paradigm. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so the first question I want to pose is, should you have a brand? Are you going to actively try to promote your brand? But before we can answer that question, I think we need to identify or define what a brand is. What is a personal brand? So when we talk about personal brand, there are two levels, particularly for this group. This graduate school with religious studies focus and a peace studies focus. We are people who are idealistic. We tend to be modest. We tend to have high values. And so given that reality of who we are as a group, and I'm assuming that everyone falls into that category, there's two levels we can talk about our branding about. I'll talk about what a brand is in a second. First is my personal testimony. Who am I? My profile, in other words, what have I done? What are the ingredients of who I am and where I've come from, what I've accomplished, those kinds of things. Where have I worked? What have my missions been, etc. But secondly, those of us who are driven by altruistic goals and motivations, we don't often feel comfortable talking only about ourselves. In fact, we're not even doing it just for ourselves. We're doing this for what we feel to be a higher purpose. And we hope that the way that we express ourselves can be a testimony to the ministry that we have and can interest people in our ministry. It can promote our nonprofit through the good works that we're doing and the professional achievements that we have in our profile or in our resume. So we're trying to represent through this personal branding something that's behind us. And it's, in other words, trying to give a testimony through our example of what brought us to this point in our lives. And honestly, my confession to each of you tonight is that this is my motivation. I've been doing work in higher education recruitment for over 20 years. And because of that, social media has been a key component in targeting and identifying and engaging a younger market, particularly undergraduate students and also younger graduate students. So my desire was to help them understand through the work that I'm doing, why it is that I'm doing it and who I am. So actually, in my life of faith, all the branding work that I've done is to bring testimony to God and true parents. Frankly, it's an indirect way of doing it. It's not a frontal approach to the individuals, but often people will inquire, wow, what a good person you are. Wow, amazing the kind of things that you've been doing with your life. Why do you do that? And you can engage people in a conversation over time. So let's talk about creating your brand. I have a couple of quotes here that I find to be very revealing and interesting. I think it will help you to understand the concept of a brand. This is written by a marketer, a well-known marketer in the field. He says, I ask readers of his books, to consider how they show up in any medium. That can mean in a meeting, at work, over email, or social media, or among your peer networks. Everyone leaves an impression with every interaction. So actually your brand, you already have one, because each of us are leaving an impression with those around us, whether we're doing it consciously, actively, in different ways or not. So your brand is actually the impression that you leave. The beauty of this kind of modern era and the technology that we have at our fingertips, if we can use it, employ it, and come to master it, is that we can advance who we are in the way that we control the narrative. This is a quote from Andrew Seaman, who is very prevalent on LinkedIn. He has a newsletter, which if you're interested in marketing or social networking, I would encourage you to subscribe to it on LinkedIn. This is something that came out last year. He says, the most important question anyone can ask is, what do I want to be known for? And am I shaping the narrative to make sure other people see me that way? So there's nothing wrong with looking at your strong points and achievements and sharing that with others. We're not talking about bragging. We're not talking about going over the top. We're just simply stating, sometimes very subtly, who we are. And the wonderful thing is, all of us know, for the work that we do, is that those that have eyes to see do see. And that leads to advancement personally for you, and also is a great testimony to your ministry or the work that you're doing in service. So, what is my personal brand? It's others' perception or impression of me. And also, as I said, through me, the work that I represent. So, what we would like to share with others through the things we have on social media is our experiences, our expertise, our competencies, what we've been doing in terms of our active work, and what our achievements are. All of this is a testimony to a greater and higher purpose. So, I would encourage you to think about that. Each of you, when we look at society, in many ways are models for others. You may not consider yourself that way because we all are very modest. We all are very aware of our shortcomings. But there are many good things that we, in our life of faith, in our life of service, exemplify that others need. So we're trying to do something to highlight that so that we can encourage others to do the same. Okay, so let's look at some of the common Facebook or common social media platforms. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with these and others. Facebook, of course, probably probably the largest. The next one to the right is Instagram. Under that is X, what used to be known until recently as Twitter. YouTube, we all know YouTube. In fact, YouTube is the most popular social media platform in the world. That's what the statistics reveal. You may be surprised by that. And then I put a newer one in, which is Threads, which is kind of like a newer product parallel to the kind of format that X has or Twitter has. So some of you said you're on social media every day, and likely many of you on Facebook every day. And honestly, the largest segment demographically of users of Facebook in today's market in the West, in the northern West, is the older age group, 50 and above. You may be surprised by that. And that's because older people, older people, comparatively, have found a way to relate to each other through this medium in a very easy, manageable way. So what I'd like to say is that in thinking of your ministry, thinking of your career, thinking of your present position and your future goals, please be intentional with what you post and what you interact with on social media platforms. This honestly is almost like a permanent record, and it is a history, an archive of who you are in many different manifestations that employers today will look at. It's not unusual today if then companies go for a job interview. If you're among the finalists, don't be surprised if your employer asks to see your social media. And depending on what is on there or not, sometimes that will influence the outcome. Honestly, I've seen it happen. So be intentional means be purposeful. And what this means is when you do things, do them with a certain goal in mind of what you want to achieve, what you want to express. It's not artificial. It's simply a tool that you're using to achieve a goal. So please align what your presence on social media with your ambitions and your goals, your higher goals. It's very important to be very professional. This doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean being businesslike. It can be very warm and charming, but it's professional. And what we're going to talk about here in a minute now is that the brand that you want to express in this modern world is one of your humanness, a real person. You're not artificial, you're authentic, right? So, but just remember the last point here, you are responsible for your image and brand. So if I were to go on any one of our guests' social media tonight, I would learn something about them. And if there's something on there that you regret putting on, remember that and be careful of what you put on there, because it will not go away. So that said, why should we be present on social media? First, Facebook became popular because you want to share with your friends, right? But beyond that, if you're looking professionally outside your family circle, you want to make contacts. Contacts become part of your network. When I was younger, I didn't understand the concept of networks. And the people who were older than me would always say, well, the friendships that you're making today will become your network of tomorrow. And so many of you have witnessed that in your own lives. I've learned the value of your contacts. And my rule of thumb is that you can never have too many friends and you can never have too few enemies, right? So do your best to make good relationships with as many people as possible because you never know how that will benefit you in the future. Also, we're on social media to learn. We don't always believe everything we see on social media, and we should be discerning. But if we are discerning and we go to good places on the internet, we can learn a lot about things we didn't know before or enhance our understanding. Also, through this, as we're going to see clearly, we can advance our career and our mission path, and opportunities appear. Some of the best opportunities come to you. You don't seek them out because they're seeing your brand. They may not see your social media, but you portray your brand in your relationship with them. And they come up to you and say, would you like to do this? I think you'd be a good person for this job. And then on the highest level, we want to be a good influence on others. So we're setting up our social media accounts with the purpose of being a good influence and leaving a good impact on the world in a positive way, academically, morally, spiritually, and so many levels. So again, be intentional and align what you put on social media with your career ambitions and your life goals. Okay, just some tips that are very common marketing guidelines in the modern era. The first thing that I want to mention is authenticity. People are looking for stories. They want you to tell your story in a transparent way. Nothing artificial. Once you have seen a lot of profiles, you've seen a lot of resumes, you can know right away who the person is or something about that person. But the authentic ones shine through always. So people want to connect with you as a genuine person. They're not looking at a name or a picture. They want to learn about you through your social media or your personal brand in a personal way. Secondly, tell your story. This is becoming more and more common. We call it in the world of faith, giving your testimony. Right? How you came to know God, how you came to know Christ, how you came to know true parents, how your life changed because of God's intervention. This is a testimony, this is a story. But there are many, many stories to tell that lead to that central message. So I think, this is my opinion, I could be wrong, that it's incumbent upon us in this age to become more and more sophisticated. We have to be wise and broad. I love the quote of Paul. Paul was a person who went to many lands and spoke to many people, many different languages and backgrounds, but he had an ability to relate to them where they were. So I think there's an example in Paul for each of us. We want to be able to tell our story in a way that is relatable, build an emotional connection with them, and then over time, deepen that relationship with them. Secondly, be visual. I don't know, I've been on Facebook long enough and at a cell phone long enough before there were cameras. Do you remember, any of you older folks remember when there were no cameras on your cell phone? That's like, oh, some younger people say, no camera? Absolutely, there's no camera. And as a result, even Facebook was not mobile friendly. You did it on your laptop or your desktop. And because there were no inventory of pictures, you didn't post a picture. You just wrote some words, right? You remember the beginning, it said, Stephen Boyd is happy. That was your post, right? Stephen Boyd is feeling down, something like that, right? That was Facebook in the early days. But today, everything is enhanced by a visual manifestation of what you're trying to express. It could be a birthday party, it could be a trip that you're on, it could be a conference that you're at. They can see it. It's becoming more real for them. So be as visual as possible. And then keep in mind that as you do this, if you're really serious about advancing your ministry or your career, this is a very competitive world. If you're looking for a new position in a company or in a nonprofit somewhere, we know very well that this is a very competitive world. So we need to do this in the best way possible so that whoever's looking at us And our social media is one thing, one component they're looking at. They can differentiate us. We stand out from the others. You're not totally different, but there's something that matches you in the mind of the one that's looking for someone to hire or to take on, to acquire, to ask for be a volunteer. Be different in a good way. Okay, then why LinkedIn? Why aren't we talking about LinkedIn tonight? Well, actually, LinkedIn is the largest professional network. Facebook is not a professional network. This is created to be a professional network for professionals in the sphere of their activity and industry. And in fact, LinkedIn, the use of LinkedIn and the attitude towards LinkedIn has changed dramatically. When LinkedIn first came out a number of years ago, it was advisable. The experts advised your group should be very small. The number of followers that you have or the people that you follow should be kind of a small network who are directly related to your field of activity. Today, that's changed, partly because LinkedIn has 1 billion users. This is the data from today off of LinkedIn's homepage. You have the facts and figures of a company. That's where this came from. In 2022, that same figure from the same source was 740 million. So it's growing. It's incredibly growing. So I only throw that out there to show you the magnitude of where your network, your potential network is. It's the whole world. It's really people, the whole world. And you do it to build connections. You can do it for your job search and literally any place in the world, particularly if there's virtual assistants now that can live in one part of the world and work for you while you live in another. So this is an extremely valuable tool. Forbes magazine says that LinkedIn is the most important social network for professionals because it's not just strictly business facts and figures. There's a social component, which is what this relationship building is about. And according to JobBite, which is a marketing website that's pretty well known and cited in industry, 94%. I think it's higher now because this statistic is a little bit dated, a couple of years old. 94% of recruiters use LinkedIn to screen job candidates. I know I do. I've hired many people in my life. I've seen hundreds of resumes, right? And now we look at LinkedIn as if it's your resume. And this is what the CEO Rora in the Wall Street Journal said last year. LinkedIn is really your best resume. So that said, if you know that to be the state of the industry right now, if you don't have a relatively good, complete LinkedIn account, you're actually handicapping yourself. Because if you're seeking employment, your potential employer is going to look at that. Okay, so I said a lot. I'm going to stop here right now. Maybe we can, Dr. Walsh, if it's okay, maybe we can go to some conversation. I'll stop sharing my screen and maybe people have questions they'd like to ask.
Very clear and stimulating presentation with a lot of great information there. Do we have a way to acknowledge people who may have a question of clarification? Dean Boyd hasn't finished his presentation, but we're just taking a pause in case somebody may have a question of clarification. You can also put something in the chat. I guess maybe one thing that your talk stimulated in me, because I think a lot about HJI and we talk a lot about ministry, and we have broadened that concept where it at one time may have meant more narrowly, I'm going to be ordained as a person who's a clergy person, and I will take a position in a church, and I will guide the liturgy and give the sermons and manage a church or a parish of some kind. But we and those of us who've worked with Reverend and Mrs. Moon for years, kind of broaden that idea of ministry to include beyond the traditional, let's say, idea of clergy to any vocation in life that is dedicated to building a better world. And I guess as we look at this platform of LinkedIn, do you see a place for that broader purpose other than more narrowly, and your experience with LinkedIn, is it broader than, let's say, I'm looking to hire someone and here are people that are posting because they want to be considered for advancement in their career?
You know, that's a very good question, Dr. Walsh. And for those who haven't been active on LinkedIn, that would probably be one of your first questions. Wait a minute, this is not what I want to do because that's for people looking for jobs. I've got a job, you know. So that's a very good question. In fact, having been on LinkedIn for many years and I exchange messages regularly with people I don't really know, but they're in the same field, and I build relationships. The ones that do least well are the ones that are out there trying to selling themselves directly. You know, if you're on LinkedIn, or you may have a new friend on Facebook and they write you immediately, hello, my name is so and so, and would you buy, I have this product, would you like to buy it? You know, I have this service. You know, it probably has some level of return, some small percentage of return, but by and large, people who use LinkedIn, you know, regularly over a period of time are turned off by that. Because what I found, and I think many have found, is that LinkedIn gives you a chance to associate with people, and you discover things through the relationships that you build that establish relationships and strengthen them over time. Now, that said, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. LinkedIn can't be used in isolation and it be expected to do very much for you beyond simply your regular interaction. This has to be brought to life through in-person encounters of some kind. It could be a Zoom call like this, but in a venue, in a setting where it makes sense, it's in context, or at a conference where you meet someone and then you become a friend of theirs in LinkedIn. I remember, I don't know, this is 10 years ago in India. I was in Hyderabad. I was trying to get a phone, you know, not this kind of phone, just any kind of phone that I could call on. And in India, you have to register like in many countries. So a local person can't get a phone very easily. So I was with an Indian friend. We're in a phone shop and he's filling out the papers for me. And I noticed this guy across the way who was kind of looking at me. And I thought, that's really odd. He keeps just looking at me, you know. I was engaged with other people. And finally, when there was a break in our conversation, he walked over and said, are you Stephen Boyd? And I said, yes. And I'm thinking, whoa, I'm in the middle of India in a city that I've gone to many times, but I don't know very many people. He said, we just became friends on Facebook 2 days ago. And so that's an unusual encounter, but this is what happens. This kind of unexpected doors open, not through just me shaking somebody's hand, but you know, you get a call. Like I was sharing with you the other day, Dr. Walsh, that I'm friends on Facebook with a gentleman who's a consultant. I do private consulting. He approached me by telephone about 2 weeks ago, inviting me to do some consulting work for him because we had seen each other at a conference. He had seen my presentations. He knew who I was. And I've known him for 10, 12 years, but it took that long for him to say, okay, this is the person I want to work with. So these kinds of things do happen. So I think it's more about association than direct, like sales. It's not that. And I think if you try to do that, you may not do so well.
Yeah. You know, I ask a follow-up. You know, again, this relates to the concept of ministry, but some associate ministry with evangelism and may think, well, this could be a platform where I could proclaim my religious views. And what I thought I heard you counsel, and I've seen this a lot in working in various nonprofit contexts, that it isn't always the best to, if you have a particular faith commitment, to lead off with that proclamation any more than you would really want that or welcome that from others, but focus like you said, maybe on a brand that has a kind of mission statement that is not, I would like to convert you to my way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Is
That's
that?
a good point. That's a good point. And I think, Dr. Walsh, I think you would agree that when I talked about becoming more sophisticated, the sophistication that we seek is a heavenly sophistication, whereby we are able to relate to all of God's children in a way that they can understand. I mean, we can't even sometimes get the attention of our own children, right? Because we're not relating to them in a way that they can understand, a meaningful way. Engagement is in marketing today, engagement is the key. So the success of your social media platforms and your interaction on social media has to do with the level of engagement. Not just how many followers, but how many of those followers engage with you. So in a similar way, if you're very frontal in this setting, in the social media setting, you will get some result because there are people who would respond to that. But I think comparatively, you will do much better if you speak more indirectly and you talk about what your faith has brought you to do and be, and your examples of the kind of projects that you're involved in. I'm not just talking about social service or social justice, but the kind of person that you are in the community that you come from. These are appealing to the certain needs and wants of the people that God is trying to bring to understand to his bosom, really. So I think that we have to be intelligent, not just in social media, but in many ways, just be very broad and big people to embrace everyone. And it may take time. It may take time, but this is kind of the way that God works, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dean Boyd, I better let you get back to other things you want to follow up on in your presentation, but thanks for entertaining my questions. And those of you who are listening, please put a question or comment in the chat column. I see Hans Moyer asked if there'll be a recording, and Angelica just answered that yes, indeed there will. So any comment or question, please post in the chat. Dean Boyd.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Walsh. Okay, let's continue. Let me share my screen here. We'll go back to the slides. I hope that everyone is finding this informative and hopefully useful as you move forward. Okay, so one of the objectives of this presentation is if you don't have a LinkedIn account, I'd like to ask you to set one up. Just get started. And actually, it's very easy to do. This is actually also taken from the LinkedIn home site. They give you, these are their instructions. You just go to linkedin.com, you click join now, you enter your email, your name and email, you create a password, you upload a profile picture photo. This is actually very important. There are some people who set up a LinkedIn account, they have no picture there. So that says something. Do I want to associate with the person who didn't even bother to put his picture up? Or why didn't he put his picture up? You want to be as this is a professional medium. So you want to be as choose a good picture, a relatively professional picture. You add information about yourself, where you work, what industry you're in. You put your background in terms of your education, your work experience, and then you start to connect, right? You'll find people that are suggested to you by LinkedIn, or you may already have a contact list that you can load into LinkedIn, and then the invitation will be sent. It's consensual, right? In other words, you have to ask someone to follow them, and they agree or not agree. Most people will accept, right? So as you do that, as you begin to build your profile, I'm going to use the example of my profile in a minute here to kind of illustrate these points. But the first thing you want to do in your LinkedIn profile is to add a professional headline. So in the first line, they kind of know what you're about in a very general way, but at least they kind of begin to, okay, this person is working in this area, this is interest. Secondly, you want to have a summary of your professional highlights, right? Who you are, what you've accomplished, what your goals are, what it's like to work with you, right? Something about you as an individual in your place of work, your place of mission. And then you have another section where you, again, sometimes we struggle with this. Wait a minute, I don't want to talk about myself. But actually, a healthy individual can speak with a sincerity about what he or she's done, right? Without any kind of shame or vacillation or embarrassment. Yeah, so, and actually, I have found that as you do this, you feel better about yourself also, right? And you get confidence and a strength that people actually are looking for, right? Because you can talk about yourself in a healthy way. That's actually a good thing. And people are drawn to that. This is the kind of person that people come to admire. Another thing that you can do is get recommendations. I don't recommend that you do this right away. Build your network, and then in time you find one or two people that can recommend you. Then you can ask for a recommendation. There's also a way in LinkedIn for people to recognize your skills on their own, right? And LinkedIn will kind of prompt the people looking at your site to do that. And very important, you want to join industry-related groups. So if you're in ministry, if you're in the service world, if you're doing nonprofit, or you're in some professional world. I mean, in a way, the world of education, where Dr. Walsh and I work in, is a nonprofit world. This is not a for-profit enterprise. So we actually fall within that world. So I'm looking for industry things that are related to the field that I'm working in. And I guess one of the things that I was surprised by, Dr. Walsh, and I guess this goes back to your question, is that it's not just sales. Sometimes we think about professional, they're talking about sales of a product, or it's not. LinkedIn is much more than that. In fact, I've discovered in my area of activity, which is higher ed, and multitude of organizations I never knew about before with greater information and a great venue to exchange ideas that I only got through by going through the network and finding them and developing that kind of web, of connections. So there are sectors within LinkedIn for ministry. There are sectors for social relief, right? Or there's sectors for the healthcare or some kind of service, specific service industries. It's all in there, and you can find them. And and if you kind of set up a profile, people with similar interests will find you also. And they're not just looking for a job. Very few come to me looking for a job. Most of the kind of things I get about looking for a job is, do you know of a place where or do you know so and so? I'd like to talk to him. Can you introduce me? Also, that's relatively rare, but that's it. People don't come really blatantly looking for a job. It's relationship building. So one point I want to make, and this is, I think we understand this maybe with different terms, different language in our life of faith. This is not just like a directory that we put our name on, not like the old phone book that we used to have years ago, or some kind of directory of reference, all the people in the field. This is all the medical doctors. It's not that. Your name is there, but it's much more. This leads to the miracle of technology to building a network, right? I didn't understand what networking was. In fact, I was afraid to network. I'm a very shy, kind of introverted guy, and witnessing is very hard for me, all these kinds of things. And my first experience was that this is hard. This is hard to do. But as you open many doors, as you find many contacts, it gradually becomes kind of more fluid and more ability to do it. So this is an opportunity for you to meet a whole bunch of new people and develop relationships with them. But I won't say it's not going to happen on its own. I'm not saying you have to spend hours a day on this, but it does require some time and investment, some attention on your part. You need to do it over a period of time. And what this means is you want to post, right? Well, I don't have anything to say. Well, you probably do. You just don't recognize that you have it, right? So look what other people have posted. Oh, I've done that too. I can talk about that. Usually what I will do is talk about things that have already happened, events that I have gone to, presentations that I made, or people that I met. This is a picture of this, and this is so-and-so, and I tag them. They like to have their picture there, but also it shows whoever's looking at this who I'm associated with. And you want to do this on a regular basis. And people reach out to you, do respond, right? Don't ignore them. They're actually reaching for you probably for a good reason. Okay, so Angelica, let's go to our second poll. Again, we have 4 questions here, and most of this has to do with networking and branding. I'd like to learn a little bit about you. Okay, so the first question on the second poll is, what motivates you to expand your network? And you can select all of them. If it's one or none or all, it's fine. Are you trying to expand your network to advance your career? Are you trying to get new ideas and gain knowledge? Are you trying to collaborate and develop partnership opportunities? Is it for personal growth or development, right? Do I want to promote my church? Is that why I'm primarily doing this? And that's fine if that's what that is. So go ahead and just, whatever first pops into your head. We'll give it a couple seconds here. Just whatever pops into your head. You don't have to think about this too much, just to get a general idea. Okay, so we have, looks like 3 main areas: access to new ideas and knowledge, collaboration and partnership opportunities, and personal growth and development. Actually, all 3 of those are very noble purposes. Those are great things. Who doesn't want new ideas and knowledge? And we can learn through this. Who doesn't need and want more collaboration with others? I think one of the signs of the time that we're living in is that we recognize we need to collaborate more. We're just not individually doing things, we're working together. And personal growth and development. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, next question. Okay, so how do you prefer to connect with new people in your field or industry? Do you prefer to go, and this is just one choice. Do you prefer to go to in-person events? Do you prefer to go to online networking and platforms like LinkedIn or Zoom, like we're on today? Do you prefer social media? Or are you more comfortable when you're meeting referrals, people that have been referred to you by another of your trust and your confidence? Or you have a current contact of yours that introduced you? Which do you feel most comfortable with? Okay, good. So this is not unexpected. Most of us like to meet people directly in-person contact. And a lot of our good relationships begin there. And our nurturing of our current relationships are strengthened there, right? In person. And then the bottom one, referrals and introduction from existing contacts. We like this because we kind of know what we're getting into. It's not a blind date, right? We're going and we're meeting someone that someone else has told us this is a good person for you to talk to. But the online platforms or social media, they have their role too. So this is only to highlight, their answers actually only highlight what I point that we should make here, that this is not the end all. This is not the only solution. This is a complement to other ways of making connections with new people. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Question 3. Okay, this is a good one. I like this one. What is the biggest challenge you face when trying to expand your network? Okay, the first option, you can choose one thing here. Finding the time and energy to attend events and make connections, overcoming your introversion and shyness, building credibility and establishing myself as a valuable contact, or is there something else that holds you back? Just a couple more seconds. Okay, good. Okay, so looks like most of us are a little bit lazy. That's all right. That's my take on it. You may say, I'm not lazy. I just don't have time. Okay, so that's fair. Finding the time and energy to attend events. We're busy people, right? Okay, so we are busy. We are not able to set aside time, but a LinkedIn account is something you can do. It's at your fingertips any time of the day at any moment that you choose, right? Okay, so this is an interesting response. 26% said that have difficulty building credibility in the way that they see themselves or having the others see them. So this is not something that can be, credibility is not established from the get-go. It's something you build, right? And so that's why being professional, keeping your word, being consistent over a period of time open doors for you, right? In the world of higher ed and student recruitment, there are like two levels of people. This has been written about in famous books. There's the entry-level person who's like the recruiter, and they quickly burn out. That's one segment in the population in the admissions office. And then another segment are the long timers. Let's say they've been there, they stay in it for a long time. And so there's like these two categories, nobody in the middle really. So credibility and success takes time. So we're not going to be credible if someone who knows nothing about us, we just meet them for the first time. We have to build that. And then only 11% said overcoming introversion in China. So actually, I'm in that category. That was my big thing. Still is, get scared, don't think, oh, I can do this. So good. So this tells us something about ourselves. One last question in the second session of polling. Angelica? Okay, last question. How do you measure the success of your personal brand and professional influence? You can select all of these or none if you wish. How do you measure the success of your personal brand and your professional influence? Is it the number of social media followers or connections? Is it the number of speaking engagements that you make and the public recognition that you receive? Is it the business or career opportunities that are generated? Or positive feedback and testimonials from others about you or about your work? Which of these or all of them are important to you? This question is a good one, or the options are good ones, because honestly, it's all of these things that you need over time to be successful. And all these things will happen. The level of your success is incremental. The testimony to your success is something that happens over time, not in one moment and not only in one moment. It happens if you have social media and people begin to take interest in a genuine way, right? If you do have engagements and gain some recognition, that enhances your standing. Naturally, through this kind of activity, you may have some business opportunities come for. This has happened to me. All the things that have happened in my life in terms of advancement is because someone said, "Hey, I think you'd be a good person for this. Would you like to do this?" I have applied for jobs and gotten them, but big breakthroughs came because someone came to me and asked me to do something I never thought to do myself, right? And that's, again, a testimony, I think, over time. So good. Positive feedback is encouraging and helpful, right? And you can use those testimonials as we're going to see in a moment. Okay, so let's take down the poll and we'll continue with the presentation. Okay, is it off the screen now, Dr. Walsh? Is the poll off the screen?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, the screen's
Okay.
back on clear.
Okay, good. All right, thank you so much. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about developing your LinkedIn account. And again, I've been doing this for many years. I'm going to use mine as an example. So if you're just beginning, don't think that you should be like mine or like anybody's, really. It's yours. The important thing is to start. So the first thing that we talked about is telling your story. What is your story? Actually, you have a story, right? I have this, coincidentally, I have right here, this was a Christmas present from my daughter. She wants me to write my memoir. And so this is a book that gives you prompts, the story of my life. So I'm working on this a little bit, putting in little anecdotes and notes and things. And as you do these kinds of things, you go, I do have a story, actually. Somebody's going to be interested in it. So you want to tell your story. So if you go to a website now, what are you looking for? Customer recommendations, customer references. You want to see the human face of the product that you're going to buy. That's part of the product telling its story. So the first thing is to be transparent. Always be truthful, of course, but be authentic. Just be yourself. Trust that who you are is good enough, right? You can learn and change and develop, but who you are in essence is what people are looking for. Secondly, you want to tell a story in terms that can make it compelling. People can become interested in it, right? So you give context, it becomes relatable, and people develop trust with you, and they remember, oh, I remember when you said that, I remember when you did this, where I saw that post, etc. Right? And as I said earlier, you're trying to do this with the I in your own mind so that you're different from others. You're not totally different. Maybe different is one little thing, but there's something about you that when in the case of a job application, the potential employer going through resumes, something catches his eye or her eye about you. And then it needs to be visual. This is not a good slide in that sense, right? It's just text, right? But you want to be visual. You want to show some visual representation of the concept, idea, activity that you're trying to communicate, right? This will talk about who you are, your values, and particularly in ministry, it's your values that you're transmitting here, right? An indirect witness is who you are. I want to be like him, right? I want to go to his church and see what did that church do for him? That's an indirect method of witnessing. Okay, so as I mentioned in the 4 points I gave you earlier in the first part, you want to have a summary statement. It's like they call it about, right? In LinkedIn. And then you have some you have like a personal brand statement, which is that first part here, right here, right? That's a brand statement. We're not going to do that today, but you can think about that. And then you have a professional summary. You take time to write this. Then you have some highlights of things that you've done in the past, right? Then you list job experience, right? And if you're new, you don't have any, but that's okay because that's expected. We shouldn't think if we're a 21-year-old recent graduate out of university, I don't have any job experience to say, but actually you're the kind of person I'm looking for. They're looking for someone who has a certain education, they'll train you, right? But if you have some experience, you can put it on the listing here. There's a section here in LinkedIn. It's very easy to fill out. Where you currently are working and where you have worked in the past. And then if you had any kind of leadership roles or opportunities, you can list them there too, right? Again, it's an insight into your experience. Wow, he did that. Oh, this is the kind of person. It isn't like it's like a great thing necessarily, but what it is, maybe what the other person is looking for. Oh, he knows he's on that committee at that conference. Oh, I need to talk to him. Or I want to be on that committee too. It's not like you're the executive director, but you're on the committee. And that's what the person may be looking for. If you've published any articles, it could even be a great sermon. You wrote a book, right? If you've been in the newspaper, somebody did an interview with you in the paper or on the television or in the media online somewhere, you can put that in. There's a place for it, right? And so I gave an example of this is a very little article that I wrote for a company called UniQuest, where I was on the board. And then that article got picked up by another contact of mine, and she republished it. So that happened 2 or 3 times, right? So sometimes you have to do kind of a promotion on yourself to get this done, but that's okay too. It exposes your ideas and lets people know who you are. If you do some volunteer work, you should highlight that. You can even highlight your hobbies, This is an organization in India that I'm a member of on a volunteer basis. It's called IC3. I'm an advocate for them, and what their main goal is to promote the creation of and training of high school guidance counselors, first in India, then in South Asia, and actually they're all around the world. I was just reading an article today on LinkedIn about their first conference they're holding in Kazakhstan, of all places, right? They've been to Latin America. They've come to the United States too, started in India, but they've become a worldwide organization led by a very charismatic and visionary person. You can also, there's many, many newsletters that are published within LinkedIn. And I get a lot of invites from contacts who want me to subscribe to the newsletter. So a word of caution. There's a lot of them out there. You want to choose wisely. And it's actually no help to you personally if you subscribe and never read them. So I always try to make like a little goal for myself on a weekly basis. I'll read one article a week from some newsletter or some kind of news service that I subscribe to. That way I'm always learning, I'm always keeping up with certain trends, and I get new ideas. This gentleman right here is a good friend of mine. This is his weekly digest. This is has become the Bible for a lot of people in my field. And the different kinds of groups, so these, how Facebook has closed groups within Facebook, LinkedIn has something similar. They're within the LinkedIn platform, but you have to request to become a member. So because I'm interested in higher education enrollment, admissions, etc., I joined these different groups, right? This is a European association that I'm a member of. And then if you are involved in some kind of activity, you're an invited speaker, you can put that up on your page and people will see that, right? It tells them something about what you've been doing. So these are a couple of things that I've done recently. Conferences that you go to, it's good to post picture of who you met and if you gave a talk, what you said and what your topic was. And this is community building. And this is one of the richest ways to build professional connection, but it's on a human level. It's not giving my business card. Can I call you? Here's my card. Call. Nothing like that. It's human relationships. I wish I had another picture here. I met at this conference a lady who had written a book. She's from India, about her journey coming from India to America as a graduate student in North Carolina. And she went on to work for IIE, which is under the State Department, like big deal. And she wrote her story. I read her book. I loved her book. I always wanted to meet her, really genuinely. I'm moved by her story. And lo and behold, I'm standing at a reception and then she walks. And the interesting thing is she knew me. She knew me because I was communicating with her and she was so happy to see me. So that's the kind of thing. So now I have a connection with her and something's going to happen with that in the future, I know. But also, you can use your LinkedIn platform to promote events directly related to your ministry, right? So here's a couple of things that I did with UTS when we still will call it UTS. The commencement activity, the faculty roundtable event, in this case, Dr. Kone shared about. Spokane. Then you can pick up and repost articles that you didn't write, but this is an article from Forbes, right? I'm a big fan of intercultural communication and relationship between people of different nations and language and cultures. I think I'm fascinated by that. And so this is an article about Americans living abroad and the events, the advantages of that, the benefits of that. So I put that on, and then people like that. Here, this gentleman here, Keith Galdinelli, he is the director of admissions at the School of Management at Yale. He used to be a secretary, he's a good friend of mine. And then other people were interested, and some people reposted it, right? So this is a way to make connections. Doesn't happen all the time, but it is an opportunity. And then you can get statistics, right? These are statistics that I didn't put everything up, but you have analytics in some place on your page. You can see how many people in the last 7 days, they do 7 days and they do 90 days. Looked at your profile, how many times you appeared in the search, that you people looking for higher education, your name came up, and how many people were engaging in this case, the last 7 days with your posts. So you can kind of see how you're doing. You don't have to have the same kind of level of analytics as anyone. It just kind of tells you how you're interacting with people on a data basis. But so I want to just, I'm getting to the end here, and I just want to say that, again, LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter is just a tool. You need to be able to use LinkedIn as a complement for your physical work. So in our ministry, we're always working. We're always meeting people. We're going to conferences. We're working on service projects. Those are organizations that we may collaborate with that are not part of our church or my nonprofit, but we associate with them and we learn from them. We make these connections and then things come out of that. So this is a list of organizations here on the left that I've been a member of over the past 20 years, and I know their leadership very well. These are organizations that I participated in, the conferences and whatnot that I presented at. And then over here, these are other organizations where I presented at. They're not membership organizations, but I'm associated with them. And so they open a new world for me. So when I go to China, I can go to the U.S. Commercial Service office because I know them, Or if in Connecticut, we study Connecticut, which is also in the U.S. Commercial Service, I know the fellow who's running the program. I can call him up and I can say, but that's not because I met him on LinkedIn. I met him first, and then we became friends on LinkedIn. So the guy, Tony, who's in Study Connecticut, I was one of the people who was one of the architects of developing this consortium in Connecticut universities to publicize studying Connecticut for students abroad. So we'll have that relationship all the time. So you have to go beyond simply having the one level of activity. Do more. Do lots of things. It's all things together that make you productive. Interact, and you learn as you learn, and then you grow, right? So as a man or woman in the ministry, what do you want to be transmitting, behind your messages? You're trying to transmit your mission and your values. Wow, HJI, look at those good students. Look what they said, right? Look at this faculty member. He's not saying apply here and, like maybe I would do if I'm a recruiter, but he's recruiting by his message, right? We just got a new domain for our website, so we've got a lot of ideas about things we're going to do to improve and have a lot of testimonials of our students on the website, etc. As you do this, you're building your community, right? And your community is as big as the world is today. You're enhancing your credibility, you're developing your relationships, you're exposing yourself to new opportunities. And here's one point I really, really, really want to emphasize. We need to speak, not just in this topic, but in every way that we do, we need to speak the language of those that we're seeking to influence. They need to understand us. And if you're using terminology or approach or a methodology that they can't relate to, you're not going to be effective. And actually, you're defeating yourself. Not that it was bad to try that way, but let's try another way. So marketers will do, what do you do? You do a survey, and you discover through the responses what are the needs and wants of your target audience, right? So if you're trying to reach X part of society, what are the needs and wants? And how can you meet those to what you have to offer, right? And all of this can be a testimony to, as a unificationist, our thought, right? So how did I get over, doing what other people may say, oh, that's just self-promotion. Actually, it's not. It's very difficult to do this, but I really want people to know about our movement. And I want people to know that what I do is the fruit of True Parents' work and message. That's really my goal. So if we do with this motivation, we can be patient, we can be persevering, we can be constant. So as you do this, your ministry will become more visible. Maybe not in a way you've been following it before. You'll engage more with your community, right, in your local neighborhoods. You'll develop more networks. You'll learn to be more collaborative. But to do this, you have to be consistent. Doesn't mean every day necessarily, but regularly. And be patient and do it prayerfully and let God work. And I think the final goal here in this effort, you may think this is, maybe this is not what you were expecting when you heard this talk, the title of this talk. But through LinkedIn, other social media, and anything else in your life, the goal is to become credible, be a source that is credible so that we can bring our message, a good message to them. We want to earn people's respect for the way we live our lives. And in this process, we become known to them, we become known to a wider audience. And in this way, we become the influencers that we'd like to be. So when I was preparing this talk, Dr. Walsh, this term influencer can leave a bad taste in your mouth. You think of some Generation Zer, with the phone and a light, you got his product here, he's got, that's one kind of marketing influencer. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about deep connection so that we influence people in a positive way, help them overcome struggles in their life. We're not selling a product in the strictest sense, but we're trying to influence people. So you can take that to your ministry, or you can take it to the UN, and then, no time to talk about it, but there's some examples in our HJI leadership of some people who've won the servants course and gain recognition within the United Nations framework. So I'd like to give everyone an assignment tonight, and thank you all for staying on so long. We went a little bit over tonight. Let's get started. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, your first assignment is to set up your profile. And then secondly, the second step is to become a follower of our HJ International page. Our page is still very small. We have almost 600 followers. When I came on now, 3 years ago almost now, we had, I think, 420. So we've grown a little bit. We're not pushing it too much yet because you have to have something to push, right? It's not just talking loudly, it's showing something that's meaningful. So connect to our page, follow us, and be involved in our community. And I hope that our engagement tonight can be a stimulant for you to engage more with us on many levels, right? Not just being a passive participant, but also being an active protagonist in the work that we're doing. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming tonight. It's been a pleasure to share this with you. So Dr. Walsh, I'll put it back with you. Maybe there's some questions or comments.
Well, thank you, Dean Boyd. You provided a great service to all of us tonight with this very clear, well-articulated statement that also is some good guidance about how to make impact in the world. It really stood out for me that you have, of course, a deep sense of a spiritual, providential mission, but you have also established a kind of a brand that stands alone as in your capacities as an educator and being involved in higher education and enrollment management, etc. And that speaks loudly about you. And you're on this platform, you're making contacts all over the world, people recognize you, etc. And I just want to be an advocate for what you've done and acknowledge that and really respect that, because I think there is a deep witness without you shouting, let's say, your ultimate concern. You're dealing with a penultimate concern and an issue, and you're building that track record, and you earned respect of many people, and that ultimately opens up at the deeper level of your brand. So we've got 10 levels of our brand, and we're unfolding it gradually. So anyway, fascinating, wonderful presentation. Okay, Dean Boyd, I think we turn it back over to Angelica.
Thank you.
Wonderful program. Thank you. And great audience.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it.
Well, there were certainly many great points I myself am taking away. Thank you so much, Dr. Walsh, for taking the time to be with us, and thank you, Dean Boyd, for an excellent presentation. I'd also like to thank the entire audience for being a part of this event. We hope you leave here inspired and motivated to enhance your professional presence online with all of these practical tips shared today. And if you would like to refer to the session or share it with others, a recording will be available soon on our YouTube channel, which can be accessed by visiting our website, hji.edu. I am also excited to share that our next event will be an HJI Faculty Roundtable with Dr. Drisa Kone, who will be presenting on radicalization of groups in Central Sahel Africa and the impact on international politics. It will be held on March 26th, so please be on the lookout for an invitation to that program, and stay tuned for future career development presentations and other HJI programming. So God bless you all, and we will see you next time. Thank you, everyone.